Hello, everybody, and welcome to our series on driving digital transformation in state and local government. Today, we're going to be talking to you about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's cleaning out your IT closet, right? The consolidation and modernization of applications that are built in Access and Excel, or what we call user-developed applications. So today, our presentation is going to have the following things in it. We're going to do some introductions very quick. We're going to talk about the things that could be hiding in your IT closet, right? The things that are in your organization that you may want to look at to do some modernization and consolidation. So what's hiding in there? And we're specifically going to talk about Access and Excel. We're going to talk about the issues, why do it, right? Why spend the time, the effort, the money, the very little time that you have not serving your constituents, right, to go and do that cleanup of these types of applications. And then a quick overview of how to start that cleanup process. And then we'll talk a little bit about app modernization, and then we'll show you some, at least one tool that's available within M365 to start that consolidation. And we'll talk a little bit about other avenues using, in most cases, licensing that you already have in your G3 or G5 licensing. So just a quick introduction. My name is Tim Cohn. I'm the Global Practice Director for Modern Work at Quisitive.
I'm Sam Stewart. I'm a principal consultant focused on both the modern work and the Microsoft Biz Apps and Power Platform space at Quisitive.
All right, so Sam and I both have a background in working with state and local government agencies across the country. So we're pulling together examples from a significant amount of work we've done both in M365 and Microsoft Biz Apps, and sort of packaging this into what's going to be a relatively informal discussion. So if Sam and I start talking over each other, we'll make that legible or presentable for all of you. But we didn't want to make this just a dry presentation with a bunch of slides. So we're going to talk a little bit about experience and what we've done, and then we'll do some show and tell about available options for you. So let's start with user-developed applications. UDAs and every agency that I've ever worked in has had any number of applications that have been developed basically out of need. Usually there's some need within your program or within your agency services that's not met by what I would call a monolithic system, right, or an enterprise system. And for those needs, every state and local government worker I've ever worked with has been very creative about finding a way to serve their constituents. And in a lot of cases, it means making sure the right data is in the right place, or it's available to people who really need to use it at any particular time. And so they've built something in usually either Excel or Access, right, to handle the information needs or the service needs for a particular group of the people that you serve. Right. So what we usually see, right, are applications that are built in Excel, and with the characteristics of Excel being that it's all tabular data. There's charting and graphing capabilities. We see what we call spreadsheet farms, right, which are large groups of spreadsheets that are maintained and updated on a regular basis. We also see complex spreadsheets, right, with macros and other code behind the sheet to keep it updated or to handle specific functionality within the spreadsheet. And then we see multi-sheet apps, right, that are all connected together on a shared drive or in OneDrive, and those connections are made by the person who created the sheet, and they rely on that structure of that shared drive or the OneDrive to be maintained in a stable manner, or those sheets break. The other option is access, right? It's been around for a long time. It's a relational database, which is great because you're outside of the tabular data model, right? And you're into a relational model where you can create linking tables and you have a lot more control over the data model. It has the ability to create a front end for writing forms and doing data input, which was always nice. You got away from the tabular data format. And usually worked great, but it wasn't always pretty, right? And then there was some drag and drop data modeling that you could do to create the back end data structure. And then it had some reporting capabilities, right? And you could write those in and be able to report. Sam, you want to talk a little bit about the issues that we see used?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk issues, I think one of the important things to remember is that there's nothing wrong with building user-developed apps. They're important. They're honestly, we've all seen these Excel spreadsheets that your whole business runs off of or that the whole organization uses. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. But, when you're building business-critical solutions in Excel or Access or whatever, right, there are some things that there are issues. If you're sitting in IT, there's a fair amount of fear and uncertainty. What's out there, right? Do we even know what those apps are? If they go down, right? And a business user, somebody calls, right? How do we support them? We don't even know they exist. Is there PII data that we just don't know about that's being shared in an unsecure way? Even if it makes people's lives easier, it's still a risk and still, concern, and your constituents are going to care. A lot of these tools, whether it's Access or Excel, they were built years ago. And even though there are new versions of all these things, are the macros that are in there, are they upgradable? Are we stuck with a previous version of Access or Excel that has flaws? How do we share it? Does it scale? Is it one of those Access databases where you click a button and it takes 5 minutes to process data? All those things are concerns that not only for the end user and the person that built it, but from IT that may end up needing to support it or mitigate those risks. For our end users, the person using it day in, day out, people change jobs, they change roles, they retire. It's when the person that built the app retires and no one really knows where it is or how to use it. That's a risk. One of the my favorite subjects is where's the source of truth? If you've got 17 different flavors of that Access database floating around, which one's got the definitive source of truth, right? In some things, right, that's maybe okay to have different versions. If it comes to conversations around constituents or security or compliance or anything, right? Hey, you really do have to have that one source of truth. And then there's always the, nice to have features, I guess, is maybe a way to phrase it. We're working in a more and more remote world. If it's an Access database sitting on a file share, can you get to it when you need it? Can you share it with the folks that need to have access to it? Is it always available, or is it only available via VPN? Can I get to it on my phone? All those types of things are important to consider. Tim, anything to add?
Yeah, I've been in agencies, especially some law enforcement agencies that have hundreds, to tell you the truth, of Access databases. And some of them had particular gang, maybe gang tattoos, or some of them had, a particular subset for a part of town, right, with various issues that they find in there, right? And so when you have these siloed Access databases, it's also very difficult to put data together, right? And to find things out and to query that data and to share that data with other people that need to see it, right? And so we've seen that again and again with some of these user-developed applications, because they serve a great purpose for a small group. But if people don't know about them, right, then it's very, very difficult to make the most use of that application. On the other side on the IT side, what happens if, you get a foot of snow and the building power goes down, as happened here in Austin, right? What happens with our continuity of operations? How do we make sure that we keep these systems going even if some kind of emergency happened and nobody can get into the building, right? And so we saw that with at the start of the pandemic, right, when people weren't coming into the buildings and, applications stopped and it was under somebody's desk and maybe you didn't know which desk that was under. And the one person who was in the building that day wasn't familiar with it. And so, it really becomes difficult to manage that series of applications. So, all right. So that's enough griping about user developed applications. Let's talk about how you would start to dig in and clean up this situation, basically. So the first question is, what do we have and what do we do with it? Right. And so does your organization have an application catalog? Do you know what you have? Within that catalog, have those applications been evaluated? Do they know who uses the application? When's it used? What does it do? I know, Sam, we see agencies that only use specific spreadsheets or access databases during legislative budgeting periods, right? And so if if that application is only used during specific times, what happens outside of that, right? Is who keeps it up? Who downloads the data from that year? There's lots of questions around that. And so within an application catalog, which is something that really every organization should have, that evaluation of when is it used, who does it use, what does it do, and then how critical, right, is that application to your mission? We have also seen applications that are only used during part of the year or that are only used during an emergency response, right? So maybe there's some kind of incident and you need to relocate a number of foster children, or you need to bring some kids into state custody for their safety, right? And so if that's the case, then it's really critical that this application that you use to maybe collect the critical details about the kids, right, that is working and it's ready to go, and then it integrates with your system of record very well. And so, these are just things that we have seen going on at agencies where it's important to make sure that you know how critical and what the risk is of what happens if this application fails, if there's bad data around it. What do you do, or what's it going to do to your mission if that application doesn't work? And so with an evaluation of the criticality and risk, you can then prioritize what do we do, right, with this application? How high up on the priority list should it be to address and to modernize, right? And then comes the question of how do we modernize it? And that's Sam will talk more about that. How you modernize it, there's a lot of options. So
yeah, that's always a fun conversation. There's going to be applications where you may have built a point in time user developed app that solved a problem that existed 5 years ago. You've kept using it, right? It's got momentum. It's got it's got value to you, but the organization may recognize that there's that's an organization-wide problem. It may have solved that with Dynamics or any number of other solutions. And so sometimes the answer is going to be let's integrate that, right? Or maybe it's already solved and let's just migrate your data, right? Sometimes it's going to be more complex. It's going to take custom development, right? Whether it's, if we're talking about, constituent data where we've got to interact with them. Maybe there's a website that had to be built. And so now you're not, sharing Excel files between people, but you're going and building a custom app that provides the ability for constituents to interact with their data directly. A lot of times, if it's inside of your organization, you're going to be able to solve these same problems with SharePoint or similar, where you're using SharePoint framework, where you're building custom web parts in there, working against lists and other items, adaptive cards so that you can interact with that data, whether it's in Teams or within Viva connections or any of those places that you can interact with those adaptive cards and get the work done at that point in time. With a lot of this, Power Platform is a great tool that lets you leverage the skill sets, for those of y'all that are citizen developers, where y'all were the ones that built those user developed applications, right? Power Platform leverages, languages, PowerFX, which is really similar to your Excel formulas that you're familiar with, or macros that you wrote for Access. So you might be able to build Canvas apps or flows or dashboards, all with mostly existing tool sets, mostly existing skill sets, I should say, that you're already generally licensed for under your G3 or whatever licensing you have. You may be able to go and replace that, beautiful relational database you built in Access with a Dataverse or a model-driven app. There's lots of ways to tackle these problems that let you use existing licensing or existing tool sets, and generally skill sets that you may have already, whether it's, it's going to take some tweaks, right? Those same Excel formulas don't work the same way, but it's going to feel very similar to what you've been doing. And then one of the last options when those apps are, they're not the critical enterprise class application where we've got to go build this big solution in Dynamics, right? It really is a small application targeted at one team, right? This team takes calls from legislative needs, and they just need to track it, but it's only really data for that one team. Maybe it scales later, maybe not, right? Then that Teams and Dataverse for Teams app is, that those are really great solutions for those types of apps.
Yep, and for anybody who really wants to go through the options on that, it is always possible to do a full application assessment, right? And decide which apps you may even retire, right? You may not need that anymore. There may be another app within your organization that handles that job. Right. But the application assessment is critical to then get into the options. If you don't really know how that app is used and what it's used for, it can be difficult. Some of the limitations, I guess, of some of the M365 apps can be sharing with external users, the size of the application, the scalability, and and then in some cases licensing, right? So you want to understand the use case, the value, the risk, all of those things that are going on with the applications before you really start saying, I'm going to lay down this particular technology and we're going to do this particular project. All right. So we're going to do a quick demo on within M365 on an access to Teams. If you do have questions or you're looking for answers for some of this stuff, we do have some URLs that you can use to connect with us or to provide feedback, and we'll put these on again at the end of the presentation. But let me go ahead and give control to Sam.
All right. So what we have, the scenario that we're looking at, and this is a quick demo Access database that I spun up. This is a scenario where we've got an Access application where we're tracking, calls for customers and things like that. So, we've got a UI, we've got a data model, that's got the tables for customers and employees and, the actual calls themselves, so we can go and get lists of, helps if I put in the right values, so that we can go and add calls if we needed to, assign them out, all those types of things, right? So what we've got in Access, we've got a, helps if I don't break the record. With Access, right, we've got a database and we've got a UI, right? And so one of the things that Microsoft has rolled out relatively recently is the opportunity to migrate these Access databases straight into the Dataverse. So, pretty straightforward, right? If you've got a Dataverse environment, it's going to pull in, through a fairly simple migration. You're going to select the tables that you want to move. I'm just going to move them all in this case. If I can click. Oh, man. That's what happens when I'm trying to use a touchpad. It's going to pop up wizard. Everything good in life happens through a wizard where you can click next. So I've already got an environment, a Dataverse environment. This is a Dataverse for Teams environment. We can walk through how to spin that up when I flip over to the Teams instance, right? The next choice is you're gonna select, make sure you want to export your related tables. You generally always want those because you're gonna need them. You can link only a handful or whatever you want to do, right? But I'm going to move everything that we selected. I've got the environment that I want. I'm going to click next. It's going to ask if we want to validate columns types. There are some limitations when you do these migrations. Certain data types that work in Access don't work in Dataverse, and you've got to change the data type on the Access side. One of the ones that I ran into recently was doubles. You've got to change that to I believe just a normal number field. Rich text HTML also doesn't move. And some of the binary large objects, if you're saving attachments and things like that, that's not as smooth either. And so, as you do it, you'd have to go migrate or address those as you go. But I'm going to say okay. And it's going to go migrate these properties. And I actually already staged this. I'm actually going to cancel it as we go, right? This property or this migration works, right? There were no column conflicts or anything else. And so I'm going to flip over into the team side of these things now in my development environment. And so what we got once we ran through that migration is, the tables that we moved, right? Calls, customers, employees, right? And then, but it just got the tables. One of the important things to remember is that you're only moving the data model, right? The application, the UI, it's not going to move. And so what we ended up doing here is I spun up a new Canvas app, and it's very simplistic. I've not added any logic or anything else to this app. But this app lets us, once this page loads, right, it's going to have a couple of screens. There we go. There's our couple of screens that I built out that connected to the customer table, that connected to the and the calls table, right? And so we're going to be able to add records in here as needed, right? Again, there's no logic, to have required fields or anything, but you will be able to see that, we're going to be able to go and play this app. I can go add a new record. I'm not going to have a 3-letter corporation name this time. We're going to give Tim this company. Congratulations, Tim. And we'll just do a and because there's no rules, right? And I've satisfied all the required fields that we need here. I'm going to click OK. It's going to commit. It's not going to commit because I missed a form field, I believe. Now it committed. And so you see we've now got the record added for that customer. Now, and I closed out of the app. One of the things that's really cool about this particular connector and the way that we did this, though, if we still want to use our Access database and we go back, once my Surface lets me go back, still running the migration job. We can click into here, and these records that we've added, they're here now, right? And so it's actually going back and forth and updating what exists. And so if you have a user that, God forbid, they want to keep that Access database, or maybe the business logic is so much that, we really do need to keep that UI there while we build out the business logic. There's still that flexibility where you can use the Access application piece and still talk to that data in the Dataverse. Tim, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think the interesting thing about moving your Access databases into Teams is then you can actually take that Power App that they created, right? So we've actually converted that Access database into a Dataverse for Teams database and a Power App, right? And we created a Power App to show those tables. There's a lot more that you can do with Power Apps, and you can make them pretty and you can make them mobile friendly so that if you can access your M365 environment on your phone, then you can access that database from your phone right through the Power App.
And so, yeah, absolutely. And in this scenario, if you're getting calls on your cell phone and you need to log them right, it's all going to be available there. You're not going to have to remember and walk back to your desktop and go find the Access database. And so,
yeah, and this is just a really simple example of something, and it just took Sam a few minutes really to put all this together yesterday. But you can you could spend a couple of days on this and make it look really nice.
Yep.
Right. So you could build out a Power App, you could convert your Access database, build out a Power App, work a little bit on the look and feel of that application, get that in a place that you want it to be. And then you can use it on your mobile phone, you can use it on your desktop PCs, you can share it with people, and you can control access to it through Microsoft Groups, right? So which adheres to, right, the security standards of your organization.
And the great thing from the IT perspective at that point, this is all discoverable, right? We're going to know that it exists, right? It's not going to be siloed. Your Power Platform admin's going to know that the environment's there. You're going to be able to put some rules around, data policies so that you're not, the citizen developer isn't necessarily sending data to places they shouldn't. The example I always use is they're not going and taking stuff from that database and posting it to Twitter and those types of things. And so there's a lot more controls and risk management, right? There's now backups, right? So, access, God forbid, it gets deleted on the, on the file share, right? And you lose it forever, right? Well, now you're keeping 7 days of backup. So even if you accidentally delete records or whatever else, you're going to be able to restore it.
Right. So you've got cloud recoverability, you've got cloud backup, you've got in a properly governed Power Platform environment. Now you have IT visibility, right, into every Power App that you create, and you can control the data of that through the DLP policies and other things that have been applied to your Power Platform environment. So, it just adds a whole host of very positive controls and capabilities, right, to the process of building a user-developed application. So you're able to build that application in a way that's safe, that's shareable, that is governable, right, by the organization, and better yet, you've moved an on-prem database into the cloud, and now you can make use of that data with more people.
And one of the additional things that we talked a little bit about with issues is, that scalability, right? When you spend all this time and energy, you sunk, hundreds of hours into your Access database, right? Well, historically, that work's been lost. There's not a great way to leverage that if you needed to make it an enterprise class app. One of the great things about Dataverse for Teams, hey, if you reach the point where you've done what you can in that Dataverse for Teams instance, you've passed your 1 million records, your 2 gigs of data or whatever, those limitations. Or if you realize this is really useful beyond just our team of 10 people that deal with this, right? This is something that we could roll out to the whole enterprise and get value, to the whole agency and get some value, right? It's a relatively simple and straightforward upgrade process. Click the upgrade button. It moves all that data model, the apps, everything into, a full Dataverse application. And now it's essentially using that same enterprise class Dataverse instance that Dynamics and all the other apps that you build there are using. And you haven't lost the effort.
Yep. So you can go from a user-developed application to an enterprise application without losing the work that you've already put into it. And that's the key, right? Save time, save money, get done what you need to get done. So, all right, Sam, let me go ahead and take over real quick. And I will share my screen. So we're supposed to keep this short. Sam and I have a problem not talking, but we hope you found it interesting. If you would like more information, you can scan one of these codes and you can tell us both how we did. And thank you very much for taking time to listen to us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.